Good day, everyone. Welcome back to the Doc of Detox show. Today's special guest is Amazon John. John graduated from the University of North Carolina with a degree in environmental science in 1976. Since this time, it is safe to say he has been tied to nature on a universal level. Recently, John has devoted his time to conservation in the Amazon, where he is focused on environment, supporting education, research, and preservation of this beautiful gift of nature. Thank you, John, for joining me today.
I'm glad to be with you, Daryl. It's a pleasure.
So tell us how you got your name.
Well, I got the name just because spending so much time in the Amazon. And that was something that started, my interest in South America started many years ago. Actually, in the third grade, we used to get these weekly readers in North Carolina that always had an interesting story about some kid your age in another part of the world doing wild, exotic things. And so those images were imprinted in me, and it's just a dream deferred to get to Peru for a number of years until I got done with college and I sold my car. So I had enough money to go down. And so my plan was to find lost cities of gold and Inca treasure. And so that's what I went down for. 1976 was the first run.
How much treasure?
And
How much treasure
well, I've
did you
got
get?
magnificent super bounties of treasure over the last 40 years and in varying things. My first thing, we're looking, it became not just the Inca, but the pre-Inca. We got into some Chimu and Moche digs up on the north coast of Peru. So I had some pre-Columbian artifacts from that. We're selling to museums and private collectors. And then later, the path evolved into a lot of leather goods in Brazil and sheepskin and wool things from Argentina and alpaca from Peru and Bolivia. And then that evolved into gemstones, a lot of amethyst, a lot of tourmaline out of Brazil. And then it was later that I started getting upriver in the Amazon, trading monkey bones, blowguns, and then that, of course, evolved into medicinal plants. So, like all of our lives, you just you stay on course with a vision and purpose. And mine was all about treasure, finding treasure. So it's just the treasure shifted and my trail shifted.
So this was quite a while ago when you started this. So, I mean, it was a jungle back there. I mean, I know it still is a jungle, but I mean, it was a true jungle. Did you go places where they haven't seen white men before? Did you ever get yourself into any little sticky fixes or no?
Well, yeah, especially the sticky fix. I mean, when your intention is to find treasure and you're on this kind of path in those kind of circumstances, then there's just a lot of bizarre things that happen over the years. The biggest sticky fix would be with the Aguaruna Indians. The Aguaruna are up on and this was in the early 90s, up on the Rio Marañón near Ecuador. And they just had a reputation because I was dealing with the Shipibo, Ashwar, Machiginga, the Matses, Piro, all these other Indian groups in the Amazon. But the Aguaruna always had an aura about them as very dangerous and warlike characters, and people that go in there essentially would be killed. And so I was thinking they must have some really hot treasure in there, if they're willing to kill people that they go in. So I made a trip. I mean, we can spend hours and hours talking about this, but we had actually an Aguaruna that had come out of the Rio Marañón that was working with us at our base in Yarinacocha, Peru, where we were doing a lot of harvesting of medicinal plants and processing and things like that. And he was going back to visit his family, and I invited myself to go with him. And it turned into to quite a trip. We did some ayahuasca before the trip, as oftentimes we'll do. And when they're going out hunting, they'll do ayahuasca to see maybe where the game is the next day, so that, and I asked permission to take the game, for the benefit of the community and things like that. And we could spend a lot of time talking about the ayahuasca. But I was getting some extraordinary visions there of actually being chopped up with machetes. And so that was, obviously very terrifying to me. And my buddy who runs our operation there, Martine, was traveling with me on this trip, and I didn't really want to share that with him because I didn't want to add any weight to those visions. And we first went into to Lima, the South American Explorers Club. I'm a lifetime member there, and that's where people would store different stories or reports from trips they had been on. And someone had recently gone up the Marañón, and as two guys, and they were both killed. And they told me, well, the last guys who went in there were killed. And so we're trying to find out, why. And I would get this story that they were there to extract the oil from the Indian skin. And so that's why they killed them. This is a story you hear, you hear this around down there. And that can't be, that can't be true. So I'm not sure what had happened, but we gathered up a lot of documents that showed how important we were, and from different officials. And sometimes I find those are helpful when you're going through pretty strange areas. You can give them all these documents, and they realize, hey, if they do something to you, there'll be probably more people come looking. And so it's probably better to let you pass through whatever region that is. And it was a time of the Sendero Luminoso was still kind of fresh. And it was a time when Ecuador and Peru had a spat going on the border. So there's all kinds of confluences of bizarreness going on. But we had these documents, and we took off, headed north up the Andes, and up in near Chiclayo and up over the Andes there. Then you drop off on the east side of the Andes down into the rainforest. And we realized that we had forgotten our documents. And Chiclayo, this town, was the last place that had what they called an intel office, where you could go and actually make a phone call or have a fax sent. So we had our documents recreated and faxed to us there, and then dropped off the east side of the Andes and got down towards Uracusa, where the Rio Marañón is, and to find a boat to take us down to the Aguaruna. And no one wanted to take us. No one wanted to take me on that boat into, deeper into Aguaruna territory. We actually had to pay someone 3 months' wages for a long day trip. And so once he agreed to take us, we took off. And the east side of the Andes, you can imagine the water comes rushing out of there. A lot of waterfalls, really fast water and rapids at that stage where these rivers begin. And we got into a lot of rapids, and the boat got smashed up and flipped over. And by the time we drug our backpacks and everything out and pulled out our documents that showed how important we were, it was on fax paper, so we were just completely erased. And so the deeper we got in, our past was being erased. And so there was a lot of not good signs from the ayahuasca being chopped up with machetes. And so I decided I would share my vision with Martine. But before I could, he came to me and said, John, I need to share something with you. He said, during my ayahuasca vision, I had this vision of you being chopped up with machetes. And I thought that's, that was pretty heavy. But then he followed that by saying these machetes were passing right through you and not really cutting you. And as I thought about it, that did seem to be the case, but it was so terrifying nonetheless. Anyway, we got on down the river and came into this Aguaruna community, and there was a lot of drumming going on and a lot of drinking going on. We wandered in to the village there, and all the drumming just stopped. And as it turns out, it was one of their celebration, one of their holidays that they have the day before all the Aguaruna get together. All these small villages, because there's still some hunting and gathering going on. So they live in very small communities of, 50 to maybe 200 would be a larger community. And then once a year, they all come together and have meetings as a larger Aguaruna group. So we got there just at that time where they're all drinking and a lot of Masato and so everything just stopped. The drumming stopped, everything stopped, and we were led over and sat down on this stump, and there was some conversation between the chief and the elders, and they came over and led us kind of into the forest a little bit, and I remember the guy was just stabbing his spear into the ground and kind of shaking his head, wanting to know what I was doing there. And I told him I'd always been interested in finding out what the Aguaruna had going on back there, and the support that we gave to the Shipibos and some of the other communities. And he was I don't speak Aguaruna, but remember we had this Aguaruna kid that we were taking back to that community. And so he was converting it from Aguaruna into Spanish. And essentially it was, well, we've had other people that have come into our community and it's never really worked out. So we're glad we had this chance to have this talk. And that was kind of it. We got led back to our stump, and the drumming started again and the drinking started again, and then we were told that we should go to his family. This kid we brought back, we could go stay with their family, and family, they all have their own little place in the forest. So little trails come off and lead to where that family is staying, and so we went off in that direction. So it's a long story. I'm getting into a lot of detail. I'm sorry. I know this wasn't planned, but
you know what?
is,
I love it. And guess what? You
pretty
know what?
powerful stuff.
People need more stuff like this. This is the real stuff. I mean, we're going to get into your plant medicine, and we're going to talk about why I wanted you on the show, because, you're one of the top people in CBD, and the research and what you're doing is cutting edge. We're going to do all that. But guess what? I love the story, and thank you for sharing it. And let's hear the rest.
All right. Well. So we were led there, and then the kid's father and mother were surprised that he had brought me, and were a little very uneasy and uncomfortable with that. But they've been drinking all day, so they tended to get over it. And anyway, this kid's cousin came in, who was a bit of a comedian. Again, I don't understand Aguaruna, but whatever he was saying, they were all laughing about it. And so we kind of, the sun set, and we got situated into our hammocks and everything. And then the drumming would still hear the drumming going on, then the central part of the village. And the drumming was getting louder and louder as I'm lying there in my hammock, until we saw some of the elders we had seen earlier kind of drum their way into, there's like 3 of them, drummed their way into this little family's clearing, and woke up the old man, and they were having some pretty harsh words. I mean, the Aguaruna at this point in time, this was many years ago, but the son would kill his brother because it gave him more standing in the community. I mean, they would talk about killing things. And we already knew just from working in the rainforest many years, they tend to process data differently, and they think differently. They think about just killing things. They wouldn't say we're going to go fishing. They'd say, let's go kill some fish. And in fact, the brother of the kid we brought back, we went down to the river to kind of rinse off, and he showed me a barbasco plant and chopped up the root in his hand and said, well, this is how much we use to kill fish. That's the plant you would dam up a little part of the river. You put that in there, and it poisoned the fish all just float to the top. So that's what they used to catch their fish. He said, this is what we used for, catching fish. And then this is how much we would use, for a person. If you wanted to kill a person, this is how much we'd kill that. Just matter of factly, telling me this. And so we got back to the hammock, sunset, it's dark. And so anyway, these guys drummed their way into our little space there, woke up the old man, and it was a very aggressive conversation. I mean, they were really bugging him, why was I there with them? This Norte Americano. And then they were making so much noise there. I mean, I was just off in a hammock watching this through the moonlight, and the cousin who I talked about earlier as a comedian, he came in, and then everybody started drinking again, and he said something, I don't know what it was, but they all literally fell into the dirt and were rolling around laughing. And then they gathered up their stuff, their spears and machetes, and wandered back into the forest. And the old man came over and told me that I was going to be on to see the chief in the morning. We're gonna have some conversations. And so the first thing at sunrise, got up and had the wife had boiled some yucca root, and so he had some yucca root and a little frog she had on that. And then these elders came up into the clearing and got Martine and I and the old man we're staying with, and took us down to the center of the village, and everyone was there. There was probably 60, 70 people there. And I sat on a stump and on a log, and there was a wooden table there, and the Aguaruna chief came in, sat on the other side with a toucan feathered headband, and they have pretty special designs they paint on their faces. And so what ensued was kind of a bit of a trial, and so the old man was trying to explain it in Spanish, the Aguaruna into Spanish, and I was getting bits and pieces of what's going on. But they were pretty upset, and there's a young group of guys there with machetes, and they were pretty excited about about this thing going on and wanting to know why I was there. And so as I'm trying to figure out why, what's going on, and the kid explains to me, they had my backpack there, took everything out, and I had this 8mm this camera. Remember the old cameras, had
Yeah.
the tape, the spooling in there, and they turned that on, and it was spinning around, and they passed that around. And so the accusation was that I was there to extract the oil from their skin. So I thought, this thing that I knew probably couldn't possibly be real. It was just hearsay. Here I was being actually accused of that. And the fact that I had this camera that was spinning was proof that that must be why I was there. So everyone knows that those things run on or lubricated with the oil from the Aguaruna skin.
Wow.
I don't know. And so during the course of this thing, and the old man that was sitting there, I brought some gifts in my bag. I had a really good machete. This was a U.S. Army machete, and some ball caps and things like that. And he had his ball cap on, and you know how a baseball cap, you unfold it, and then put it on.
Yep.
But his was folded, and he just had it balanced on his head. And he was still really drunk, and he kept falling off his stump there. And so I figured, well, that was my representation here. Things weren't going so well. And then at one point, this is what was really interesting. At one point, the chief leaned over and just looked at me, and I heard these words in English. What I heard was, I know why you're here. I know who you are, but I don't have control over this entire group.
Wow.
Now his lips weren't moving. He just leaned in,
Right.
and that was the message I got. It was kind of a beaming, and and so he uh, there was uh, another gentleman that came in about this time who actually had like shoes on and some shorts. He was in Agaruna, but he's obviously one that had called on the shortwave radio that came down river to witness this or be part of this, some higher level guy. And he came in, and I had bottles of herbs on the desk or in my backpack, and they had them on this wooden slab there. And and he was looking, and it said Amazon Herb Company, and kind of nodding his head and said something, and then he left. And shortly after that, the chief was making a ruling, and so the ruling that he made was that had to go downriver to where all the Aguaruna communities were getting together, the next couple of days to decide tribal policy and all of that. So all the guys with machetes greeted that with a great deal of joy and gusto, waving their machetes so I knew that wasn't real good news for me. And then everybody kind of dispersed. And um, so we went back to the little family area and spent the afternoon there, and then we're doing a trail to another one of their relatives. They were hiking off to. I was hiking and had a little 8-year-old kid and his brother in front of me on this trail, and they were hiking along, and then they just stopped, really startled, and uh, and I looked, and they said there was a snake, like a hargon, and a hargon is a bushmaster. It's a very venomous snake, and I just looked. It just looked like a bit of a stick to me, but the older brother grabbed this big fallen log there, small tree, and just smashed it, and it flew up on both sides and said, 3 if by day and 5 if by night, training the little kid on how you kill the Aguaruna snake. And then they carried the snake and off we went down the trail to his relative there. And so they had a fire going. So we're sitting around the fire, uh, and he had the snake, and he was just squeezing it, squeezing the venom out, just squirting the venom out on the ground. And that's one of the most toxic and venomous snakes there are. And it's actually the leading cause of death with the Aguaruna is the snake bite. It's not the degenerative issues, it's snake bite. And so when he was doing that, then they started telling a story about the old man and his snake experience, where he had been out setting traps for tapir, the big tapir animal that would fall into the ground in big and deep, big holes, and putting uh, leaves over the top, and these tapirs would fall in. He was checking his tapir traps, and a boa fell out of the tree on him, and he fell over and he rolled down this hill. And as he rolled down the hill, a snake had wrapped around him and was putting the squeeze on him, and he realized that he was in pretty big trouble because he couldn't break free of it, and every time he would exhale, the snake would just kind of squeeze a little more, and he dropped his machete, and so he saw a bush, and he knew these berries on this bush were really toxic, so he'd stripped off a handful of these berries and hitting the snake in the mouth, and finally it struck him, and so he shoved these down its throat. But then he couldn't get his hand out, and the snake started swallowing his arm, and it had him up to about his elbow, and he's waiting for these berries to kick in, And they did, and the snake died. And so, this was a story he was telling, and they were all laughing because they remember when he drugged this snake back into the community that swallowed him up to his elbow. But it was anyway, that was what just happened that night. The next morning, went down to the river, and I was kind of hoping to see a boat headed back upriver rather than downriver where everyone was getting together. But the chief, everyone's they had to stand around the river because they didn't have boats, and the boats that were coming downriver would pull over and pick them up and carry them off. And the chief was standing there and said and told me, he said, um, you should see, essentially through the translation, you should see if you can and find a boat, and good luck. And if you come back, you should have permission to come back. Now, I don't know how you get permission to go back, but he then got in a boat and slipped away. And so he was kind of the moderating influence, if you will. So he had kind of cut me a little bit of a break there. And all the other boats were nobody was going upriver. Occasionally have a boat from other communities that would slide by, and they would see me on the riverbank and point and wonder what I'm doing and all that. And so I know I was pretty big talk at wherever their big group meeting was. But we stood there all day long, and there was nothing. And so that night, when I wandered with Martine, we went back into the little family clearing, and the old man there was surprised to see me still there and said, look, I don't know, I can't be responsible for, what happens to you. The chief left, and he was a little more of a moderating influence in the community. And so we don't know what's going to happen tonight. But fortunately, that night was spent without incident, and we did get a boat the next morning. We were flagging a boat, and they slipped over, and I was in the boat, and it was moving up, and then they were a little disturbed that I was in the boat, and I wasn't sure, exactly what was going on. But on the way back up river, there's another voice that came and said, hey, um, you have enough treasure, take it to a larger audience. You really don't have to hang it over the edge every time. And so that's when we were selling only to doctors, our herbal products at that point. And so it opened up a vision to reach out more to the public. But anyway, that was you asked me about a sticky situation that came to mind. I'm sorry it went into a longer story, but
You know what? It wasn't a
that's
long
an
story.
aggravated story.
It was a real story, and it's really important that that people understand. And this is a real story. This is real life, and I think people can understand real life, right?
Yeah, yeah. It was very, during that time, I was thinking it was very surreal. I've been in the Amazon for, working down there for 12, 15 years. So this was really, is this really happening? Who else has had this kind of experience? And, you think the early American settlers, in North America and in the United States, when they were going west and ran into, especially the Comanche, um, in a lot of those raids, there were settlers that were, essentially kidnapped and taken with the group. Most of them were killed, but some actually stayed there and spent their life and grew up. And there's some really interesting stories around that. So uh, there's a commonality. But yeah, that's part of the great adventure, the great adventure in South America and life that you really don't know what's going to happen. And, so these experiences, we relish. Everyone's life experience has some sort of thing like this, I'm sure. But, that's just the way it worked for me.
Well, again, we're back to the instead of a reaction, take positive action. because the outcome would have been different if you reacted different, right? You probably stayed really calm, didn't show that you were fearful, and that you trusted that they were going to make the right decision.
Yeah, and I was ready to die. I mean, I was completely aware. You know, I had about a 90% conviction that they were going to kill me because that's what they do. In fact, the guys that went in after me were killed as well. So that's just the way it was, and I understood that, and it wasn't like an escape because it's all far gone, and there's no boats to take. You were just a long, long way from from anywhere. But yeah, and it turned out good. And if we fast track, I mean, to today, I mean, this was 90, so 2000, 2010. This is 28, almost 30 years later. About 3 years ago, we actually got a cell phone call from the Aguaruna.
Wow.
Okay. I mean, this is how fast
Huh.
things are changing, and the technology can change because you move upriver, you put in a solar panel, and you've got you know, under right circumstances, they called and were actually inviting me back at this point, and said they were collecting the sap from the Sangre de Drago tree. So somehow they had gotten the message of what I was continuing to do, and this is like 30 years, almost 30 years later. But the change have been, like in every area of the world, have been so dramatic, uh, so dramatic.
What do you, I want to talk about, you've got lots of treasures, but I want to talk about, what are your favorite Amazon botanicals? But before we go into that for healing, what do you see for the Amazon, or what do you think?
Um, I tend to be really optimistic. It's just the way I live my life and the way I express myself in the world. And so I think the opportunity is to recognize the value of the living rainforest. I mean, why is the rainforest important, first of all? Why is it important, I believe, to the continuation of our species? A healthy rainforest is that important. Why? Because it gives us, as we know, the oxygen that we're breathing. People are beginning to recognize that more and more. It's got the diversity of plants and animals that we need. You've got the medicinal plants there that we're going to be so dependent on. So there's several avenues of what makes the Amazon valuable, because if we don't recognize its value, if it's more valuable cut down than alive, then that's the way it's going to go. Once we recognize the value of a living rainforest, it becomes a lot more valuable than alive than dead. And that's where the medicinal value comes in, because you've got 100,000 species of plants down there. The Western model of science has looked at just a tiny 3% for their therapeutic value, yet almost 20% of pharmaceuticals come from that. So, and many plants down there have been looked at for their pharmaceutical activity or their medicinal activity and therapeutic activity. And people ask me, why hasn't someone made a drug out of it? And the answer is pretty simple. And there's several examples. For example, Pedro maca, pata de vaca. These are leaves that are used in Brazil for reducing blood sugar levels. So obviously and it's just a hot water infusion of the leaf. So obviously that is a really big target. Diabetes is a multi-billion-dollar drug industry. And so every drug company is down there looking at that. They see these pata de vaca, Pedro maca, and their model is to, let's break this down into the active ingredients and see which one is working, and then we can isolate that and make a drug out of it. And the problem was, when when they broke that down into the seven, major constituents and tested them each one, none of them worked. So they only worked when they were together. It works in a hot water infusion of the leaf. You make a tea out of the leaf, and that works. And they saw that work, but they could not isolate a single compound that would work from their business model. And same thing with Sangra de Drago, the sap from the croton of the cherry tree. It bleeds this blood red sap that people use historically to heal wounds, stimulates fibroblast migration, those cells, and it heals wounds really quickly. The signature plant, it looks like blood, and that's what you put it on is wounds. But in addition to that, it was proven to be extraordinarily antiviral, especially with like herpes. So there again is a multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical target. And there were two drug companies that ended up partnering and spent, well over $20 million trying to turn that into a drug. They saw what it worked as a sap, but they don't sell sap, right? They have to, their business model, I'm not saying this is good or bad. I'm just saying it doesn't fit a business model when your model is to, isolate a compound and patent a compound and have that as a pharmaceutical entity. They couldn't do that. And that's, I think the rainforest in many cases is protecting itself from pharmaceutical companies because you've got lots of complex chemistry, and oftentimes the way the plant in its own miracle entity of being creates this complex chemistry that our bodies understand. We've been eating plants a long, long time, so we understand how to convert that complex chemistry into and integrate that into our physiology for therapeutic benefit. So these plants are protecting themselves, I believe, from, in many cases, from the pharmaceutical model of distribution.
They've
So
got
the
they've
sap works. We sold sap. They don't sell sap. We did sell sap. And in the other case, we sold pata de vaca, pedro maca. We made an extract out of that. We can't say it's for diabetes. We can say it supports healthy pancreas function. And so people have to educate themselves a little bit to know that their pancreas is really involved in blood sugar balancing. So it takes some education, but we made those things available to the public because they're there, they work, everyone knows they work, and it doesn't fit the other model. So that was actually good news.
excellent. So, are you still selling these products today?
Well, I sold the company, so I'm
Okay,
not personally selling those.
right.
I do formulation for people. So a lot of these botanicals I'm talking about, I mean, there's a lot that are really just very, very appropriate for today, but they're available. Now, I brought back Unia de Gato in the early 90s, and overall probably 300 tons of that raw material that we sold to other dietary supplement companies and manufacturers. And so that's a kind of a mainstay in the herbal space now. Shanka piedra is Onyegato's got this rich source of oxindole alkaloids in the bark, which really stimulate phagocytosis, macrophage activity, which is our immune system.
Right.
So it's a wonderful immune system. It's a wonderful anti-inflammatory agent as well. Shanka piedra is a terrific botanical that Shanka is a Quechua word that means to shatter. So the name of the plant is to shatter the stone. And it's pretty much infallible for kidney stones, gallstones, and it's antiviral as well, especially for hepatitis. And so it's a wonderful liver kidney support. So as you know, when you're talking about detox, this is an extraordinary botanical for that.
Yeah, and the thing is too, there's a lot of herbs that people use for liver detox and kidney detox, and they do a little bit, but they don't really hit home. I mean, you can say you've done a kidney cleanse, but did you actually clean your kidneys? You can say you've cleansed your liver, but in most cases, we're really just scratching the surface with a lot of herbs, right?
Exactly right. And when we're talking about liver, I can speak a little more intimately because that was a big problem I had. I had a hepatitis and Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and actually had a near-death experience in a hospital in North Carolina with that. So my liver was really compromised, and so during my travels in South America, Occasionally I get this low grade fever and go down with this, just because of just the residual activity of my liver. And that was happening in a community, and they wanted to know what was going on. I tried to explain it. Next thing I know, they had gone off and gathered when they got those Chanca Piedras, Sangre de Drago, and were making these teas and drinks for me. And I had, at that point, I was doing monkey bones and things. I could care less about botanicals, but they fed that to me, and it changed my life. After a couple of days, I realized, hey, wait a minute, I'm feeling really good, feeling more energetic. I'm feeling more grounded. I'm feeling at peace in my immediate environment. All these things are happening, and all I've done is just ingest some new chemistry, new energetics, and new nutrient value from the rainforest. And that's integrated in a way where all of my organs, heart, spleen, thymus, lungs, liver, are all coming up to a new level. And after a couple of more days of that, I realized I was just as good as I was before. Where I was operating at about 60 or 70%, I realized I'm back to 100%. In a couple more days, Daryl, I went to 110%, 120%. It was like, well, I've never felt this good before in my entire life. Where has this been? So I always maintained a stash of those botanicals. And then it was later on, then I sold the Raiders of the Lost Art, and we started Amazon Herb Company.
Beautiful. So I know you're really big into cannabis now, right? And it's exploding all over the place. Do you think all this attention is warranted? And where do you feel we're going with this? And, sometimes I think that, again, it's the government setting us up to set up all these cannabis growing farms. And then, I don't know, are the drug companies going to move in and take over? Or can you tell me? Because I'm sure a lot of people are kind of wondering where this is all going.
Yeah, well, we're all wondering where it's all going, and the fact is, I think it's going in a good place. I mean, the fact that it's going at all is good,
Yeah.
because here's an extraordinarily therapeutic plant that we as humans have had a relationship with. I mean, a medicinal relationship for well over 3,000 years. I mean, it's documented, well over 3,000 years of written documentation of our relationship medically with cannabis. And that's only been interrupted the last 70 years. So we're just reconnecting with our natural relationship with this plant, because you look at a time frame like this, it's only this much where we didn't have access, which is the last 70 years. So, yeah, this is normal that we should have access to this plant, like we should have access to every plant. So, yeah, as we're really looking at it now, we're really beginning to understand it. And Raphael Mechoulam, I had opportunity to meet him in Israel. He was the first guy to isolate cannabinoids. In this case, it was THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, and this was back in the 70s, 60s, and 70s. He isolated that, and him and his team isolated CBD, and then many other cannabinoids have been isolated, of course, since then. So he's been researching this for the last almost 50 years nonstop, and still is. I saw him just 2 years ago in Jerusalem, still there in the laboratory, still researching it 50 years straight. So yes, it's warranted. And his group also in the early 90s discovered the endocannabinoid system. And every human being, we all have an endocannabinoid system. And so we have cannabinoid receptor sites on practically every cell in our body. So we're totally geared to receive, the benefit from cannabis and cannabinoids receptor sites. So now we've identified, Dedi Miri at his lab and the Technon Institute up in Haifa, Israel, has identified 140 different cannabinoids. I mean, we were focused on THC and CBD, whether CBG, CBN, CBC, the THCV, CBDV, and all of them have a V aspect. All of them have an A aspect, being the acidic form, THCA, CBDA, the acidic form, which is the way the cannabis plant actually produces cannabinoids. When you harvest a flower, it's all, even a high THC plant, it's going to be THCA. And you don't get high even from THC in the acidic form. When it's heated, it's called decarboxylation. So there's a carbon bond there. You break this carbon bond and decarboxylating it, and it goes from THCA to THC. And so that's with heat. So if you smoke it, you've heated it and you've broken that bond. You cook it
Oh,
in a
wow.
brownie, you've heated it, you've broken that bond. If you do a cold extract on it, which is what I like to do, because the acidic form of all these cannabinoids also have a lot of therapeutic value. So when you do a cold extract on it, you can use alcohol because cannabinoids are very soluble in alcohol. Then you have all the therapeutic benefit of the cannabinoids, but no psychoactivity, even with high THC. So, and I think that's one of the best forms for pain. And then when you heat them, then you convert it to the decarboxylated form of all the cannabinoids. And those also have very therapeutic benefit. I mean, THC has very therapeutic benefit. I know there's a lot of rage around CBD now, which is, an excellent agent for a variety of things, but it's not really a substitute for the full spectrum of cannabinoids, including THC. THC has extraordinary therapeutic value. And so I always advocate for, as full a full profile of cannabinoids and terpenes as you can get. And the terpenes are the essential oils, or the smell, the aroma factor. Some cannabis will smell very citrusy. Some cannabis will smell like kind of skunk. Some cannabis will smell like a diesel fuel. Some cannabis will smell like lavender. Some cannabis will smell like mango. So all of these entities are these smell factors, or the essential oils, are also very, very therapeutic. The limonene, the pinene for depression and things like that, they're very uplifting in the mood. So in addition to the cannabinoids, you have all of these terpenes, and the terpenes are essential for the expression and the modulation of the cannabinoids. So when people are looking for a product, I say you really want to look for a full spectrum as you can get of all cannabinoids: CBG, CBC, CBD, THC, and CBC, and look for a terpene profile as well, because that's really what's going to help modulate it. I'm not a big fan of CBD isolates. They're right now, I mean, they're inexpensive to make, and they're easy to dose. So I think most of the product you see in the marketplace now are CBD isolates, and you've got the dosage on the bottle and everything. But if you're missing the other minor cannabinoids and you're missing the terpene profiles, you really got a product that could be a whole lot better. So full spectrum is the way to go, and pay attention to the terpene profiles as well.
Yeah, it's like that with everything, right? Everything being whole. You can't keep on pulling things apart, and even if you're going to concentrate them because they've been shown to do this, they only did that really well when they were in the whole state to begin with, right?
That's exactly right. And it's some of the minor cannabinoids, some that don't even have a name, that only have like a number, or where they show up, on an HPLC, that are really, really important when it comes to uh, when it comes to serious issues. I mean, and we know that there's certain chemovars, or strains of cannabis, certain profiles and mixes of these, that will have an effect on different types of cancer, and other chemovars that will have a benefit to other types of cancer. So it's really interesting that, I mean, the chemo, when I say chemovar, I mean like a strain. So cannabis is not just cannabis. There's hundreds of types of cannabis. All cannabis sativa, the same, genus and species, but it's a different profiles, because the plant will make the terpenes, the smell factor, the aroma factor, for two reasons. One, to attract pollinators, and two, to repel predators. So a plant that's grown in Afghanistan, the predators and the pollinators are different. So it's going to have a different smell profile, a different, olfactory sense coming off of that, different terpenes. And then a plant that's growing in Thailand, or a plant that's growing in San Francisco, for example. So over time, the plant will adjust to its environment and begin to make different terpenes. So these plants that have been growing all over the world, everywhere mankind traveled, he's taking cannabis with him for food, for fiber, for medicine. And so it's everywhere. And each region, you'll have different terpene profiles. And those terpenes are modulators, so you get lots of different types of cannabis. So I advocate growing multiple strains, because we're seeing different strain or chemovar are effective with different types for therapeutic activity. We know in cancer, we know it can slow down the migration of cancer cells. We know it can actually stop metastases in some cases, and we know some chemovars actually have the ability to kill cancer cells, to create an apoptosis in cancer. And other chemovars, I mean, THC was studied at the University of South Florida for Alzheimer's and dementia. I mean, a little bit, not exactly what you would expect for Alzheimer's and dementia, but they showed real benefit with that. So because of our endocannabinoid system, an endocannabinoid system that not only do we have, but every mammal has this endocannabinoid system, then it's there to create a balance and a homeostasis. So it influences almost every neurological and physiological activity in the body. So when you're giving your body a broad spectrum of cannabinoids, then you're affecting a broad spectrum of things. So, I mean, different cannabinoids would be MS, Alzheimer's, dementia, cancer, pain, inflammatory processes, seizures. There's a big spectrum of benefit that you wouldn't expect from any one plant, because you think of all the different metabolic processes. Normally, I'm looking in just plant medicine for specific plants for specific issues. But in this case, because this broad range of cannabinoids and endocannabinoid system we have, it can influence virtually every aspect of our being.
So, I mean, it's safe to say that I think that you're really onto this, and you've made this into a science. And now, does Happy Tree Microbes have anything to do with this? Is this a new business venture, and are you working on trying to get different types of cannabis from all over the world? And are you studying that now to see what it can do and how efficient it is with these different conditions? Is that it?
Yeah, that's all of that is it, I guess. I mean, it is a big it, but yeah, on my part, there's some very serious scientists that do this every day with, in gigantic labs. You think of Ethan Russo or Deddy Miri, and uh, there's a lot of work going on, a lot of very exciting things happening. Um, but on my part, I'm growing a variety of cultivars, chemovars. I've grown about 26 different chemovars. I've bred some new genetics. I have 11 new genetics of cannabis that I bred, and my target is pretty much cancer and pain. Now, I'm not a practitioner. I'm not a doctor, but I know a lot of people with these issues, and so my wife is kind of my number one person I've been working with. And what I found is we've got a combination of chemovars, like 21 different chemovars in combination. So these chemovars have different profiles of cannabinoids and terpenes, but in combination, when I extract and combine these into a formula, and some are acidic, some are completely decarboxylated, we're just getting a wonderful, extraordinary benefit that I'm really, really happy with. So these specific chemovars, we're looking at growing these out in different parts of the world to make this specific combination available in lots of different countries. So there's that side of it where I'm experimenting, because this plant medicine is what I've done for 30 years, and here's an extraordinary plant there's extraordinary research going on right now, and there's going to be a lot more that's coming out that's going to be quite stunning, and I think life changing for so many people. Now with Happy Tree Microbes, what I've discovered when we're looking at a plant, I love wild plants growing in their natural environment from a medicinal standpoint. The reason for that is that they are, by definition, the strongest of the species. They have survived whatever ecological and environmental challenges, and they are there. They are alive. Somehow they made it through. They're living wild in the jungle. And so that's the strongest of the species. That's what I want, because by definition, we are the strongest of the species. For some reason or another, our parents and great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents have survived, right? Through a very challenging
Right.
world, all the way back to dinosaurs. Our ancestry somehow figured out how not to get killed by dinosaurs and everything else. So by definition, we are the strongest of the species. We want to integrate the strongest of the species. Now, if we're not collecting something wild, then of course organic is best. And then how does something grow? I mean, in that plant, that miracle entity of the plant. So when we really look at that, that's where the Happy Tree Microbes come in. It ultimately ends up in the soil. And when you're looking in the soil, you're looking in the microbiology of the soil, because we put a seed in the ground, we put a plant in the ground, and really that plant has to take in nutrients from that soil. So first of all, the nutrients have to be there, but it's really about the bacteria and the mycorrhiza and the microbiology of the soil, because it's those bacteria that are going to determine what the plant's uptake. The bacteria colonize in the rhizosphere, they colonize around the roots. As the roots grow down, the root hairs grow out, they're covered in these bacteria, and they are kind of like the gatekeepers to what gets taken in or not. There's a lot of enzymatic processes going on at that arena. So you've got to have the microbiology in the soil to have the healthiest, strongest, most therapeutic plant. So what Happy Tree Microbes is a product, we call it bioharmonic tonic. And this product we make out of lactating cow manure. So what we've got about 1,000 different types of bacteria and mycorrhiza. And then there's 3 Amazonian botanicals I put in there just to imprint the plant intelligence of the Amazon rainforest, which is our highest concentration of life energy, on Earth. I want to imprint that intelligence and growth into these microbials. And then you'll be interested in this, Daryl. Then I use some gemstones. We make a gem elixir, and the idea is to create a harmonic frequency in the soil. And the reason we would do that is because that bacteria I talked about colonizing around the roots, those bacteria are communicating with each other with a chemical signaling. So this has been documented and proven. And we also know that these bacteria are also communicating with bacteria in the plant. So these chemical signaling to communicate. And these bacteria are what will help to to make unavailable resources available with a phosphorus or nitrogen, and allow the plant to uptake it. And they're communicating with each other. They will colonize, they will form biofilm, They will share resources. There's extraordinary kind of life force microbiology intelligence going on in the soil. And so since they're communicating, if we could create a harmonic frequency in the soil by using gemstones, and we know, like, for example, the quartz crystal, the way that matrix grows, it replicates perfectly, and so it can actually receive and transmit waveform, and was the original thing used in transistor radios. In fact, they were called crystal sets, because they could receive and transmit waveform. In this case, it was radio waves. So when we're imprinting in a gem elixir using sunlight and distilled water in the gemstones, so that the sun hits the stones, it resonates at the frequency, whatever the stone's frequency is, and that molecular structure is recorded in the water as the medium, and then that goes in with the microbials and the bacteria and the mycorrhiza in this mix, and that goes into the soil. The theory was that should make this communication of the bacteria more efficient, and likewise should make nutrients more efficient, and likewise would make the plant have a better yield and potentially be more therapeutic. And ultimately, that's actually what we see. We see about a 7% increase in yield when we use this on plants, and we see an increase in terpenes and an increase in cannabinoids. So, and even more so, I think it creates an opportunity. Okay, we get more yield, we get more cannabinoids, we get more terpenes. So we know the plant's more therapeutic that way. But because the bacteria is communicating with each other, and the bacteria in the soil is communicating with the bacteria in the plant, it may stand to reason that the bacteria is also communicating with the bacteria, our bacteria, and our microbiome, right? We have a microbiome, we have the bacteria in our gut, and of course, a lot of that's been damaged with antibiotics. So we're eating a lot of probiotics now to replace that bacteria. But people feel really good in their garden or when they're around plants. I think potentially we're looking at an interspecies communication of the bacteria between the soil and the plant and our microbiome and our gut and our bacteria. So even though we may not consciously recognize it, we realize, hey, we feel good when we're around these plants. So if we consciously recognize that, then maybe that opens up a channel of imprinting and inputting intentionality into this communication cycle as well, from a therapeutic standpoint. So, as a medicinal plant guy, I'm looking for everything I can to help influence or to help allow the plant to manifest its greatest therapeutic value for us. So that's where the bioharmonic tonic comes in. Ultimately, it's a liquid, takes about, maybe 3 to 6 milliliters, just like a little dropper full per gallon of water. And that's all it takes to really make that work.
If I can say this, we're talking about, gardening and everything like that, but you know what? Microbes are what keep us healthy, and microbes are actually the most intelligent part of this whole planet. And people think that they're cellular, but actually we're much more of a we're a walking glob of microbes more than we are tissue cells. And most people can't get this into their head because, and please don't get me wrong, everybody out there who is in the medical field, but we've been taught to attack the microbe. And when you attack microbes, you're killing yourself. And so if we take a look at the medical field, we look at agriculture, we look at the chemical industry, they're out there trying to kill the microbes, which means they're killing the planet off. And then when you go after yourself, you attack your microbes, it's actually a hate program. So everybody really needs to wake up to this fact. And this formula that you made, I've never heard anything like this before, but especially with the mixing with crystals. Everybody, you know what? Are you ready, everybody? So the lowest form of crystal out there might be just a rock. But does everybody know that if you lived long enough, rocks grow? So there is actually consciousness in rocks. So understanding that there could be consciousness in crystals, we should already be there. And then doing what you're doing, you've taken microbes to a whole new place, and what you've done is you've made them into super microbes. And everybody out there, every microbe talks with every microbe, and I mean, it might be new to you, but all the soil microbes talk to the microbes that are inside your body, and that's really what life is all about. And if you guys can actually get this information into your head and drink the Kool-Aid here and understand that you need to protect your microbes, and every bad microbe in your body was a good guy at one time. So when you're out there trying to attack the bad guy, all you had to do was reinforce the good guy, and the bad guy would either mutate back to a good guy or he would be abolished and sent away. Am I right? How's that?
Yeah, no, you are right. It's a very
Okay.
good definition. We are just a big group of microbes. I saw latest research talking about the entire microbiome in the eye. So we've concentrated on our gut, but it's happening all over our body. I mean, we are more microbes than we are cells.
How would people get your tonic? How would they get this? And can you say the name again? And if they could get it, I want you to say it at the end of the show, but I want you to say it now. Because believe it or not, everybody out there, if you want to talk about getting your nutritional supplementation, you get it by looking after the soil.
Yeah, the soil is everything. So yeah, the product itself is called Bioharmonic Tonic. Bio is life, harmonic is a gemstone influence, and tonic means really growth and regeneration. So Bioharmonic Tonic, and it's at Happy Tree Microbes, happytreemicrobes.com. They'll be able to get that product. So anything you're growing, and I mean, I know we talk hours about the commercial food supply and the the downside of consuming a lot of that. So anything you're growing, everyone should have a garden of some kind. So tomatoes, squash, beans, whatever your favorite food is, just grow it yourself. And so this tonic works on that. It works on medicinal plants, cannabis in particular we're talking about here, but it will work on tomatoes. You'll get more tomatoes, you get a better yield, more nutritional factor, more therapeutic value in that, whether you're looking at lycopene or all of these plants, have therapeutic value. All of our food plants have therapeutic value in one form or another. So this will really allow your entire garden to express itself, at its ultimate manifestation of therapeutics for you.
So everybody understands. So you're saying that, it can go in your gardens, it can go in your plants, it can go in absolutely everything that you grow, and it will enhance it immensely, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So again, can you repeat it again? They can go to Happy Tree Microbes, right? Is that Happy Tree Microbes? Go ahead.
happytreemicrobes.com or bioharmonictonic.com. You'll go to the same place. Bioharmonic Tonic is the product. Happy Tree Microbes is our company.
All right. So what else do you have planned for your future? Anything?
Well, I'm just we're just staying on this path. I'm advising and working in the cannabis industry, very very in depth, and I'm on the board of a public cannabis company in Australia. We're doing things in Australia. We're doing things in America. Research is going on in Australia. Research is going on in Canada. So there's a lot of good things going on at the ONJ Cancer Research Center in Melbourne, Australia, starting a cannabis and advanced cancer study early next year. That's going to be great, and that'll be the first of other studies, because we're forming an actual plant medicine research institute there to really carry that to another level. So it's time, it's time for as people looking around and start looking at what they're eating and then start getting into the microbiology of how all that develops and happens. I think we're at the front end of a lot of really good things coming from this.
Beautiful. So if somebody wanted to follow along with you to know what you're up to, where would they go? Or would they go to happymicrobestree.com? Or would they go somewhere
Yeah,
else?
yeah. Happy Tree Microbes. There's a bioharmonic tonic. I think it's an Instagram there, and that's kind of where that's at. And I will come back online. I will come back. I'm not on the Facebook or Twitter, any of that. I like to drop out. I live up here in the hills, in an undisclosed uh, place outside of Santa Barbara up here, and I really like that. I can focus on my work and my research and my plants, and then yeah, I'm speaking at conferences and things. So the place to connect is probably the Happy Tree Microbes and Bioharmonic Tonic.
Beautiful. So what would you suggest for everybody out there for today and their future and, what they can do to help themselves and their family?
I'd say it starts with intentionality.
Yep.
Just
Yep.
clean up your intentions. Take the time to recognize, to go inside and recognize what your gift is. We all have a very special and unique gift. Recognize what that is. Get in touch with it. Find ways to express your special gift with the rest of the world, to the benefit of the rest of the world. And if that's the intentionality, then I think all manner of good things, seen and unseen, really begin to come into your life to facilitate that. So because I see people really engaging, at that level, I see I'm very optimistic about where we can go from here.
Beautiful. So am I. And I want to tell you that I loved your story and I love the work that you're doing, and I'm sure everybody else does out there. So, everybody, why don't you, if you're going to check out his product, can you let us know? You can go to our intercom and let us know, or just on Facebook. Let us know how you love his product. And then if you love it, why don't you let everybody else know about it so that everybody can have happy microbes dancing in their soil and dancing in their tummy. All right. I want to thank you, Amazon John, for joining me today. And thanks to everyone who watched today's show. We would not be doing this or having this show without you. But I want to thank you, Amazon John, and just know that you're an important part to the planet. And it's really, it's really a beautiful thing when you find your passion, isn't it? When you find your
Oh yeah,
passion,
yeah,
everybody out there, I'm going to tell you, if you're miserable, you're not doing your passion. And if you're not servicing the world and humankind, I guarantee you're not doing your passion. So find your passion, and then you'll have complete focus, and you'll find out that serving the planet and serving others is called serving yourself. Again, thank you, Amazon John, for
yeah.
doing that.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Darrell, and I really appreciate the format you have and the work you're doing. I was happy to be with you this morning.
And I want you to know that you're welcome to come back anytime, but you have to bring a story, okay? We need a story, all right? Everybody loves stories. Okay? Everybody loves stories. We know that, right?
I've got some, I promise you. Yeah,
All right, well, maybe you'll come back in the new year. Maybe you'll do
I'll
that.
be happy to. Yeah,
Oh,
let's do.
okay,
I'll be happy to.
let's
Yeah,
do it. Thank you so much, sir.
righto.
Righto. And remember, everybody, Monday and Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we have a live Q&A. So please ask your questions on Facebook, Instagram, Intercom, YouTube. And know this, when we do our Q&As, we actually have everything timestamped, all the questions. So you can go directly to your question. So you don't have to hear me go, yeah, on. So you don't have to do all that. You can go to your question, and I'm going to answer this question truthfully. Does that mean I send you somewhere else? Yes. Does that mean I'm going to take care of you as much as I can? Absolutely. But just know that those Q&As are your show. And every Wednesday, we have a Doc Talk show. And you're going to find things such as Amazon John. I mean, come on, seriously. I mean, this information is amazing, okay? All right? and he tells good stories too. So understand, everybody, please leave a like on this show if you enjoyed that, what you've watched, and let us know how you feel about it. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the notification bell to never miss any future shows. You won't want to miss them, because guess what? We're going to try to bring you the most informative information and massive take action strategies, because that's what it's all about. And remember, everybody, okay? Call and get your Braveheart band. Okay, 3, 2, 1, you got this. Be the change you wish to see, and goodbye, and have the best day of your life. If you're looking for life-saving and life-changing information, well, you've come to the right place. Don't forget to click and subscribe. Stay connected.